pretty good. I had a very chill week, I guess, so it's been pretty good. Thank you. How are
Nice. So
you?
not many assignments and whatnot.
Yeah, no, just some readings and stuff, so it was pretty good.
Good. That's nice to hear. How about you, Surya?
I've been good. I haven't had too many assignments either, so I've also just been chilling.
That's a nice feeling. Anybody stressed out? Not too bad. All right. It's that lull in the term. That's a good feeling. That's good. That's good. I've been
I think everyone's lying because I can't see how no one is not stressed out because university is very stressful. Everyone when they first come into university, they think it's so easy. They think it's like high school, but then they come into university and they realize they actually have to work hard.
There it is. The gauntlet's laid down. Maria, thank you. I like an opinion.
I'm so stressed all the hair fell off my head.
Oh man, look at that. Very tight.
Jason, I told you gotta stop pulling out the hair, buddy. It's not going well for you. You're molting.
Well, can you see your future at all or what?
Well, it's not looking very bright, I can tell you that for sure.
Maria, I know
life
that
ahead of you.
when I took sabbatical leave and I came back last year, it would have been like a year and a half ago, and I got back on campus, I just realized this place is a pressure cooker. I know they don't try to do that to us, but it just is. We're all keeners and we're all trying to get ahead and learn and all this, but it can get pretty intense. So I hear you. Hopefully we learn some things during this pandemic and things change for the positive going forward. All right. I think we're just going to start. We're 2 minutes after 2. It's good to see you all. I'm going to get right into the PowerPoint because I got everything right in it. So if I can remember how to do this. Okay, so here's the PowerPoint just about teaching RE today. Good. I thought we'd start off with a prayer. Would anybody be willing to volunteer to read the prayer? It's pretty straightforward. It is a Salesian prayer, which is a group of religious priests that follow the steps of St. Francis de Sales, 16th, 17th century saint that was actually did a lot of work with just regular lay people like us, not priests, and kind of forged a really cool devotion, just a regular day, everyday devotion about how to live our life more like Jesus. But anyways, could anybody volunteer for this?
I think Adam said he'd do it.
Thanks, Adam.
I knew that was coming.
You got done. Okay, well, you know what you can do next week. All right, Adam, let's if you could read it, please.
Sure. Yeah, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, I know you are with me and love me. Give me peace of mind as I prepare for this time of study. Help me to focus on my books and notes. Keep me from all distractions that I'll make the best use of this time that is available to me. Give me insight that I may understand what I am studying, and help me to remember it when the time comes. Above all, I thank you for the ability to be able to study, for the many gifts and talents you've given me. Help me always to use them in such a way that they honor you and do justice to myself. Amen.
Amen.
Jesus, I also thank you for the gift of Jason in my life. Amen.
Yes, that's it. Okay, we all have our cross to bear, right?
Yeah, some are heavier than others.
Yes, they are.
Some crosses have more hair.
Okay, the outcomes for today. There's all of our mugs. I thought I wouldn't mind to hear if there were any comments about the presentation by Susanna last week. I'd like to hear a few comments. But what we're going to be doing today is focusing on speaking some about a good teaching instructional strategies. We had a lecture about interpretation of the Bible. I'll take any questions on that. And then a good chunk of our day today will be looking at creating and critiquing learning outcomes. So you had written a bunch for the mini projects, and we'll review those, and then I'll send you off on the next week. And I'm going to mention about the lesson plan assignment right away too. But any thoughts about presentation last week? Anything you'd like to say?
Faith for me.
How about, would you give it a thumbs up? Was it a valuable use of time? It was good. Okay. Kind of neat to hear somebody in the field. Okay. We'll go with that. Yeah, I learned a few things. And of course, listening to somebody who's out in the schools and whatnot, always a good take to you. So good. Well, let's move along. I think we can build off of that. The lesson plan assignment. We are then, I've brought up here, everybody signed up either to be on their own in pairs. So we got 9 groups. And what happens next? So I'll walk us through this. We're going to have to find how we divide us up into 2 groups. I can just do that on my own, or I thought maybe somebody might say, you know what, our pairing wants to go with this pairing, and we can just work something out quick on the fly. So you're a little more comfortable and enjoy it some. Okay, so what will happen is once we have those 2 groups determined, then you will have a week and a half to do your 4 or 5 presentations. That's all we're doing in the course. I won't have additional readings, and we won't even meet then. I'll be around at the regular meeting time, but you have between then March 31st and April 9th. That's kind of bridges over the Easter long weekend to do your presentations. So the presentations are half an hour. So let's say if Jason and Adam are doing theirs, their group of, let's say, 7 people meet, they do their presentation for 30 minutes. And then once they're done, well, as they teach, you kind of walk through and they teach it like you're a regular grade 9 class, if that's what they're doing. And then as you're doing that, just making notes. I have a feedback sheet I want you to fill out. And when they're done teaching in half an hour, whether it's right then or half an hour later, to send them back feedback. Okay, so it gives them some insight into what they did and what they didn't do well, or what they could improve on. And then at that point, we need to set a date for when the assignments are due. I was talking with some people about having them do, let's say if Mackenzie and Ali present on April 7th, I would say it's due within 1 week. The problem is if I push it back too much, the challenge is that I would like these to be all back to you by the last day of classes, which is April 16th. So I guess I'll just say loosely, they're due within a week after your group presents. So if they present on the 7th, then it's due on April 16th. If you present on March 31st, it's due on, would be the 7th of April. But if that's too much turnaround because of Easter, talk with me about it, all right? I'm not a huge stickler, obviously, the way I'm sounding. I'm sounding too flexible almost. Mackenzie.
Yeah, I just had a question. When is the first week of present? Oh, is it right there?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, sorry,
So
I was not looking at that.
what it is then is that I've got a couple things to do at the start of that week. Like I'll have a lecture and a PowerPoint to follow, maybe a reading, and that's it for that week. And then you have like the rest of that week on your own to do this, and then the whole next week.
Okay.
And so let's say you and Ali are meeting on the 7th, maybe Peter's also in your group, and you guys go back to back. You can do that. What I don't want to happen is everybody say, okay, let's just cram this in for 2.5 hours and we'll just kamikaze through this, because it'll just be terrible. By the poor person who will go last, it'll be a terrible experience for them. It's bad enough doing this online, but so break it up. Say if you have 5 different people presenting or 5 pairings, that we go to this day and to another day and kind of work it out that way.
Okay.
All right, good. Thanks for that. Other questions? There must be more. No? Okay. I guess I've explained myself kind of well enough. Let's just decide on the 2 groups. Let me see. Sarah's right there. Sarah, who are you grouped with? You're with Lexi?
Yeah, I'm with Lexi.
Okay. Is there anyone else you want your group? Anyone you want to avoid? We'll throw them in the other group. Anything like that? No?
No, no preference really.
Anybody have a preference? Oh, we're all just so shy because we're on this internet thing. Usually students are telling me I have to do this and that. Nobody? You just want me to make the groups? Yeah? Does somebody just want to make them for me?
Well, I for sure don't want to go with Adam. I'm just kidding.
Okay. Okay. So we'll split those up. That means Mackenzie.
No, I'm just kidding. We can
I
go
know,
with
I know,
we
I
can
know,
go with
I know.
Adam.
She's just
if
mad
you
because I forgot to hand in the mini project, and so she's a little cheesed. right now.
Yeah, come on, man.
She's a little chap.
Oh, man. What did you do in the mini project?
Oh, I forgot. Okay, I was trying to
Forgot to
communicate
hand it
well
in.
and make sure everyone was done. And you know, my friend with less hair now never said anything back, so I was waiting for him. So I didn't hand. So my bad. Didn't hand in the project, and you know, Mackenzie's not super pleased with me now.
No, I'm just kidding,
Okay.
Adam. It's all good.
Oh,
All right, then. I'll just make the groups myself and I will send that out to you, I guess, early next week. And then what you'll need to do is talk amongst your 6 or 7 people, 8 people in your group, and you will need to decide what days you're going to do this on. All right, and times. When you're done that, once you have your time, I'm going to have to write this all down, but let's say Peter, he will then he'll have to send out a Zoom invite to everybody just in his group. And please include me in that Zoom invite, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it to everybody's just with my schedule and your schedules and everything, but I will come and watch some of your lessons. Okay. All right, Andrew, how's that sounding?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good. Okay. All right, then let's move along. It sounds like everybody is just cool with this. Let's move along to the first, the kind of the main reading that I just asked you to take a look at, and that I'm asking you to speak about. I was so excited when this article came out just a year and a half ago. It's by, I'm assuming this was her doctoral work. She did a project on this. McGaw, an American who is teaching on the West Coast of the US, and she looked at instructional practices of high school religion teachers. So just some great ideas for what excellent teachers do and what works in the classroom. And it's research to boot. What I'm asking then is that thinking back to the article you read, I've pasted and copied here the recommendations for future practice that and circled kind of a few highlights. What I want you to think about an example of a past RE teacher. Now, I know not everybody has taken religion in school, so you might think of a pastor, or it might even be a parent. Things or whoever it is that was able to teach you and use some of these instructional practices, or just really made a real impression on you. Okay, that's the first question. The second one then is, what practice do you intend to use in your future teaching? When you think of what you're comfortable with, given religion and given your background and your kind of comfort level with religion, what do you think, what practices would you want to use? What would you prioritize? All right. Do we need to break into small groups, or can we just talk in our large group? I was thinking of sticking with the large group. Is that all right? Okay, I'm seeing some heads nodding. Good. People are alive.
I mean, I can kind of just touch on that like real world application thing. I
Good.
think
Explain it. What's this about real world application?
I mean, I can't really I don't have anything that comes to mind of like a past like a religious education teacher, but I just think it's like a really important aspect of our practice that I think we should be trying to use in like whatever we teach, because if you're not applying what you're teaching to the real world, then your students aren't really going to care, because what's the point of learning it if it doesn't apply to like your life?
Yeah, and that's all right. That's where a lot of our education has gone in the last century, right? So we really emphasize that, and it makes it more meaningful for people. So excellent, yeah. So making those real world connections in religion class. Does anybody have a teacher that made real world connections in their religion class? Or you could think about, how would you make real world connections in a religion class?
Um, so I didn't really have a teacher who did it, but I had a teacher who brought in a priest who kind of made those connections.
Oh, okay.
When I was in school, Father Catfish was the priest who'd go to the different schools. And I remember him coming to my school to have a discussion with us, and we'd ask questions, and he'd talk about the ways in which the different teachings of the church apply to our lives today. And I thought that was pretty good, but it's been a while, so it's hard to remember exactly what was spoken.
Yeah.
Because
Great example, Peter. Father Catfish, Mike Monroe was his name, and he was a priest, and he unfortunately died of cancer about 6 years ago. But he even put up a YouTube channel. And I know, because our church isn't open, we go to mass at the chapel and we can't go to church. So we usually just have church on Sunday mornings here in our house. And the homily, we often pick Father Catfish. And if you go on his YouTube channel, he's got tons of stuff. And I've had students in the past engage with his stuff, because he takes difficult religious concepts and makes connections. Like, he's a big Star Wars freak, and he's kind of funny. He's a little geeky. He was actually a TA at the university. He got his master's in mathematics, so he's pretty smart. And he really made some great connections. So thanks for that, Peter. Someone else, what's another way to do it, or an example that you know? Oh yes, Mackenzie.
Hey, so one thing that I noticed in the article that was really awesome was student-centered learning. So giving the students their own voice and allowing them to kind of reflect, analyze, and through a discussion and question-based opportunity. So allowing the students to kind of like put it back on them and have them kind of, analyze and figure out what scripture is saying, or, about religious education, so that they're able to kind of make their own view of it and how it relates to them in their life as well.
Great, excellent, right? So how picking a story even, right? So if we look at the story of the Good Samaritan, I think we're all aware of that, right? And we can talk, that is just a great tool to ask about, who is our neighbor? Who do we care for, right? And you put that on students. And of course, if you're in a junior high that's having problems with racism in the school, or just tensions within the group, boy, it's a great opportunity to make it student-centered in what Jesus is saying to them. Of course, you could even beef it up a little, make them do a little biblical exegesis, make them think about, what is this story about? What's the difference between a Jew and a Samaritan? If you know those differences with ethnicities, it can really bring out the story. So great idea. So that student-centeredness is helpful. Someone else?
I'll speak to the cooperative learning that they talked about in the article. I know sometimes group work isn't always the greatest, especially in religious education. Sometimes students tend to be passive, but it made me think about this specific project in junior high. Our class is split up into a couple groups, and we're each given like a story from the Bible, and we're supposed to make some sort of video presentation, like of ourselves kind of acting it out. And my group was given the creation story from Genesis, and I still remember how much fun we had doing it. And the whole class really got into it. So I think that was an excellent way to do that.
Great. Good story. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, not just thinking, let's just read a text and answer questions, but there's a way, how do we, you can even modernize it. How do you put that in our contemporary terms, a biblical story, right? So you're engaging with it, and just the playing out, understanding how you're writing this, it reminds us of the text and makes us think more deeply about it. Yeah. Good. Thanks, Sarah. Someone else? I thought the one was about that was good was about a chance to discuss things. Now, I think for new religion teachers, that's the scariest thing, because it's that idea, I have to know the answers, and man, I'm going to mess this up. And even we heard from Susan last week when she said, when teachers were okay with having discussions, but when they're online and they don't know where their students are at in the house and who all is there, they got really nervous about what they were teaching because they don't feel like they're experts. They haven't been trained enough in it. So that's totally understandable. I think discussions are helpful. It's oftentimes have a base, like have a biblical text to work from, or something from a textbook or a video, something you can kind of grapple with. Something, we talk about scaffolding learning. It also allows you as an instructor to kind of lean on something. So you kind of talk around that and work around, right? Like profs do with say a text, like I'm doing right now. I don't know everything. So we just kind of work our way through it and highlight some pieces with it. And those discussions, man, they will be tough questions. And rule number one is don't pretend to know everything. Like nobody, if you put a priest or the bishop in your classroom, they might not know everything. So just relax about that and just admit, I don't know everything about this, but I'm learning. And the students appreciate that. And if you put in a good effort and try to focus it on what you do know, and then try to branch out from there, it could go great. Dive in. Students like that. Engage them where they're at. Last time I had a course last term, and I had a student who was substitute teaching, and he's just like, what am I going to do? It was this gap between terms, and then provincial exams are going to be done. And he's just like, I've got like 60 or 80 minutes with a group of grade 12s. What am I going to do with them? There's like nothing to do. And I said, yeah, you could just let them go on their phones, but why not just ask them something? Like, say, how are your lives? Like, what's it like in COVID? Or what do you guys dream about? What's really bumming you out? Like, really, you can get, if you kind of tweak certain things in religion, you can get really at the heart of some important issues in people's lives. And I think that's what Jesus did, right? He talked about parables. He let people kind of mull over what's really important to me and reflect on the most significant things. Good. One last comment. Surya, what are you thinking?
So I was thinking about the integrating applications and the formal professional development. So I didn't have any specific high school teachers who blended that together. It was more so the program, because our religious studies programs wanted students to have at least 10 volunteer hours for each unit.
Yet volunteer hours, that's done in a lot of schools. So yeah, that's a good way to do it. A lot of themes, like say with social justice, or even we could say works of charity, right? Just reaching out and helping others. It's good for it's good for us. It's good for our hearts too, to give and to see the benefits of it. I like you mentioned the professional development opportunities. Don't let yourself be isolated when you become a teacher. Don't do it. It's a temptation. I just want to get in and out, or maybe I don't know something. Make sure that you keep connecting with people that you're with now from university, and with teachers in your schools and your district, and learn. And so what she's talking about here is making time in religion to talk about it. Just to say, man, that lesson really bombed. It really sucked. I'm so embarrassed, but it just was what it was. And to talk about it with others, and they might have some ideas, and vice versa. Allow yourself to grow, right? Studies show, research shows, You're not an expert teacher until 5 or 7 years in to your career. 5 or 7 years. I didn't know that. I thought I had to know it all, right? Those first couple of years, you're just, you're paddling. You're a little duck just paddling so fast just to stay above water. Let yourself grow into it, but know that it's with other people and building up. You really do become an excellent teacher. Okay, enough pep talk, coach. We'll stop there, but think about these instructional strategies down the pipe, especially when you're thinking about what you're going to be teaching. Boy, if you change things up and move it around, boy, it makes a big difference in learning and engagement. Don't bore your group to death, eh? We don't change things. We don't use different instructional strategies to entertain. We're not entertainers. We're educators, and we use strategies to ensure that students are learning. And we engage different ways people learn, different rates, rhythms, all this. Okay, good, wonderful. Thanks for your insights, students. Let's move along to the next part. And this was a lecture I gave based on the Catechism. So the Catechism talks about interpretation of the Bible, and I thought it was pretty darn good. And I thought it was just some basic ideas about how we interpret the Bible. And so I kind of made a lecture out of it. And so I laid out some scenarios for you to think about. And then I also have here, at the very end, I put on a PowerPoint about science and religion. That's what I did my doctoral dissertation on, was how do we teach creation in light of the dialogue between science and religion? And so I'm familiar with that, and I've kind of thumbed through that stuff in the past, and I know that a good number of you have a science background. So I just tacked that on in case you were interested to hear what I thought and give you some background on the field. How did that lecture go, Braden? Did you have any questions for me or any thoughts about that?
No, I think it was good. I really did like the part at the end about the science and religion, like the different kind of models of how people can kind of interpret that. On like this side of the spectrum, like super religious, and then just all science, and like what's in the middle and how they connect.
Yeah, cool. It's neat to see, because there's a lot of you do get those extreme cases where it's only the religion and only science, but there's a lot of work in the middle. The one that stands out for me right now, where we see science and religion come together, is that place of care for creation, concerns for ecology. When we look at the Christian faith in the Bible, there's so many connections between creation, caring for the earth, our common humanity. We're all made from the dust, from the same dust Adam is. So there's so many connections throughout the Bible. And so we see that faith and science can actually work together to make a better world. Good. Thanks for that. Who haven't I heard from today? Allison, what did you think of the lecture? I'll put you on the spot.
I really liked it, but I just wanted to comment on your biblical interpretation, because I almost think reading the Bible just based on my last 2 months of doing this is really hard, and it's almost its own sense of literacy of reading catechism and the Bible is super difficult. So it would almost be beneficial for students to get a breakdown almost every day of practicing reading text. And I don't know, I've kind of been doing that myself just to benefit from that, but I like your infographic about who is speaking to whom, where, when, why. I don't know, I liked it.
Okay, this is helpful. Okay, that's good. And you're right,
it's really hard.
it is. One of the things I do in my spare time as a prof is that I do this work on sport and faith. And I'm working on this book about Father Bauer, and it's coming together. I think I'm going to submit it in a couple months, so I'm really excited. But I realized in sports sociology, for instance, that they don't do anything hardly about religion. And it's because it's really hard and it's really complicated. And so, just like high school teachers do, we get in our little silos. I'm a math expert. That's all I do. Don't bug me about anything else. I'm a social studies. I'm whatever, right? So we silo it. And so you're right. it is so hard reading this Bible. I know we offer a course, it's the Bible, we call it, or Introduction to the Bible. It's just CHRTC 100. And we have the certificate in Catholic Ed, and out of the 4 required courses, that's one of them, because we thought people need to be able to read the Bible and understand it and just know the basic story. So it is a challenge, and there's a lot to it. I'm glad you got something out of the interpretation, because we don't want to just, some people just say, well, just read the text and take out from what you want out of it. But no, there's a whole history. There's a whole story. It's like I have my story, but there's a bigger story that's in the Bible, and even a larger story than that we might even talk about. So yeah, I appreciate that. If you have any other suggestions, yeah, mention that to me. That's really, that's a good idea. Who else can I pick on? Jason.
No, yeah, I really like the when of it, because that point that you said about people might people might think that Jesus was like sexist, but then realizing when the time period was and how it was not like acceptable to talk to women, if you want to say that, but Jesus was, and kind of going off that time, like during that time.
Yeah, he's breaking cultural norms.
That's very
Definitely
important too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked how you touched on that, because I think that's totally
okay.
Absolutely
That's
true.
right, because we can take it out of context. It can happen with anything, right? Social media, people are taking it out of context, right? It's scary stuff. So that's good. So know the text. I asked you in your religion, in your lesson plan, to make sure you bring in something from the Bible. It doesn't have to be centered on the Bible, but because it's such a fundamental piece of literature for Christians, make sure that you include something about the Bible in it. Could be a story. They always work great. So any last comments about that lecture, or anything about biblical interpretation?
I kind of just want to comment on like that science and religion part, because that's something I like continue to struggle with a lot. Maybe not struggle with, but just like have like a balance, but try and find a balance between both. And I remember like during one of the last questions that you asked, or like one of those scenarios from that lecture, you talked about like creation. And like that's something that I try to wrap my head around a lot, is like, or like find connections between like creation and evolution, and how those things can possibly work together in some way, or even trying to find out, like you talked about, forming man from dust, is like like differentiating between metaphors in the Bible versus like metaphors and stories versus like real life.
Yeah, great idea, because the way to think about the Bible, it's a library, and it has all types of genres in it, right? So it's going to have some historical works, like it's going to explain the different kings that came along in Israel's history, or it's going to have poetry, it's going to have songs, there's going to be parables, there's all different types of stories in there. And especially when it comes down to the Genesis stories, right, with the 6 days of creation and Adam and Eve, it's touchy. And for some people, those have to be historical. All right. Even the catechism, even though it doesn't say it has to be, it kind of leans towards that in it. My take, and this is what I talk with my kids about. So they might give you trouble when you're in high school and they get up there. I don't know. They'll have all sorts of weird questions. Is that I can't take that text as a historical account. All right. If you understand, if you really want to understand those first 2 chapters of Genesis, you need to understand ancient Near Eastern stories that were written even before them. And they give a different flavor. And you start to realize when God says that he made it good, creation, that was mind-blowing, right? And we just accept that, oh yeah, Christianity is all positive but no, it's really a remarkable statement to say that we're created by God in God's image and likeness, and that creation, all of creation, is good. So the interpretation, the way I take it, is that there are good people out there working in this area, trying to figure out some way to reconcile. And so it's a lot about how we interpret the Bible. And it's also about recognizing that science doesn't tell us everything. We know that in our lives, I just can't follow my biology professor and my physics prof to determine what a good life is, right? I need philosophy. I need religion. I need faith, right? What I like to talk about, Andrew, is that there's different layers of meaning. And science has a pretty good handle on what it's doing, but even a good science prof will say how much we don't know in the universe. And so it's the same way with faith. We don't know everything about God, and we don't know everything about human living accordingly, right? So it's kind of an openness. I hope I'm not sounding weak-kneed in it, but there needs to be a respect that of what each field does, and that it's different, and that they can kind of support one another. Have you ever heard of Dr. Dennis Lamoureux? He's a professor at our college. You should look him up, Dr. Dennis Lamoureux. He's got lectures. He's got everything online. He's made a MOOC. If you ever want to know more about this, he was a cradle Catholic who became an atheist, and then he became a fundamentalist Christian. And throughout that journey, he comes to realize he goes to get his doctorate in evolutionary biology because he's going to show all the scientists that they're wrong. But he does his doctorate on the evolution of teeth, and he's just like, I have to accept evolution. But he holds to his faith. So his personal journey is his own kind of working together in this. You know, he's I think he's in his 60s now, but he lives and breathes it. And it's been so important to him. So you could take his course. Students rave about it. And he's got books and stuff out there too. You might want to check out, you might even want to teach your lesson plan on something like that. All right, great. We're going to move along because we got such good things. You guys are talking today. Look at this. This is great. Okay, now we got about 15 minutes left, not even, to look at our outcomes. So I reviewed your outcomes. Thanks everybody for writing 3. We have that. People had a good sense of it. What we want to do when we're thinking about teaching is, one, we're not just covering a curriculum. We want to think about, what are my students going to know after this lesson? What are they going to know about after this unit? What is this about over the full year? That's what we want to think about. What impact is it going to make with them? And how are they going to demonstrate it? It's not about that I got through the textbook. All right. I have up here Bloom's taxonomy. That was already covered in the reading. But what we want to be thinking about is, I want to cover some lower levels of knowledge. Okay, like just asking students to identify things, summarize things, but then there's also higher orders of thinking. All right, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation we want to think about. Okay, so I'll trust that to you. Did anybody have any burning questions, or can we look ahead? We'll go right into the outcomes. Any questions from anybody? Good. So what I've done, I've read through them all, and I just cut and paste out of most people's. I asked them, or I put up their outcomes. I didn't put your name, so no sweat. So what I want you to do is look at these and comment on them. Just if you would look at one of them and say to yourself, is that a good cognitive outcome? Is that a good cognitive outcome? Is it written well? Does it make sense of what it's asking for? Same thing for the affective and spiritual outcomes. How are those going to be a little different? Is this reflected? Is the difference reflected here? All right. So take a look at that. Now I picked ones, that often need to be a little tweaked to make us work a little bit here. So see what you think. Could somebody comment on one of them?
I think for the cognitive one, it's pretty good, but explain the key factors that led to Canada's diversity, in my opinion, doesn't exactly relate to religion all that much, unless this is about like world religions.
And it is world religions. So that's all right. I think the first part is excellent. Summarize the idea of religious pluralism. What does that mean? Great. Explain the key factors that led to Canada's diversity. I think knowing some history, it's kind of, I think we could tweak it and write it a little better, but anyways, and explain the history of religious pluralism. Yeah, I think it's pretty good, because it does fit within the opening of the World Religions program. But point taken, right? I'm kind of parachuting you in here, but that's good, Surya. Thank you. How about one of the other ones?
The spiritual outcome, I think it starts out well, but it needs to maybe be a little bit more specific as into what type of moral decision making through religious practices.
I think you're right. Yeah. It's good that it starts off throughout the unit, because remember, the spiritual outcome, it takes a long time to do. You can't just do that at the snap of a finger. A cognitive outcome, we might be able to. That first one, I think that would be too much to do all of that. It's almost 3 different ones. You'd need a couple classes, but this one throughout the unit, yeah, students will participate, or we maybe say it is hoped that students will participate in moral decision making. Yeah, that practices conversion. It comes off the wheels a little bit there. So we'd want to tighten that up a little bit. So if it's talking about this law of love that's in the Bible, well, I'd say we'll participate in moral decision making in light of God's commandment to love, or Jesus' commandment to love. Maybe something like that. But yeah, we're not quite sure practices of conversion. That would just need to be clear. All right. So thank you to that person. Did anybody have anything to say about the effective one? Just say something you like, or a question you have about it. What do you think, Adam?
I was just thinking that actually. I don't like that it says it is hoped for the effective outcome. It just doesn't feel very precise. I don't know. I just don't like that. Reflect and respond to various interrelations between religion and science, and appreciate models such as hypoethical consequence. Yeah, I don't like it is hope. It doesn't feel precise. Reflect and respond, I like that as a term. I feel like it could be worded more concisely, like interrelations. But
yeah, I think that's fair, right? And then the idea of reflect and respond and appreciate, those are at the effective dimension. So excellent work there with those. Maybe just appreciate models of congruence or something, because when you state a really particular cognitive idea, the thing to remember, effective is going to take place over several lessons or over a whole unit. So that maybe it's too much detail there. The idea with it is hoped. It's used in the textbook. The reason is that you can't force somebody to do this, right? It's hoped that they will, right? I've had students before, some just don't like that, or you could say students will be given the opportunity. You could put that if you like that wording, but it is hoped. I kind of go along with that, but I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to another set here. So these 3 were on the topic. The first one's on the Bible. The second one had to do with social justice. And the last one had to do with the Eucharist, right? So that is communion, all right? Or the sacrament of communion, the bread and the wine, the body and blood of Christ. So any comments on these ones?
I guess kind of just adding on your point on the last slide, for the spiritual outcome, by the end of the lesson, it shouldn't, like, that's kind of like we learned previously, like it doesn't happen spontaneously, but it happens progressively. So
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Good. That's right. So that's a problem. And the other thing is that it says it will be able to explain Well, explaining isn't really a spiritual outcome. All right. We'll talk about that more next week as we're moving along. But explaining, that's more of a cognitive attribute, right? That's even in the lower end of Bloom's taxonomy, right? With the different our abilities to do things. All right. But it's a good idea that maybe students can respond. I thought that was good, that reflect and respond to the role of the Eucharist in Christian life. That would make sense. How about the other two? Peter, what do you think of the effective outcome or the cognitive? I'll give you a choice.
For the spiritual outcome or effective outcome by them.
Yeah, either the cognitive or the effective.
Okay. For the effective outcome, I think it's good that it narrows down on the groups of people that's important to care about, but also I feel like instead of developing that awareness, maybe you focus in more on the ways in which you can put action into helping those groups of people.
Yeah, you know, I know what you're getting at. I think, we want to make sure that it's just not, people thinking of doing the right thing, but not doing it.
Yeah.
I think you're right there, but in terms of the outcome, I think that's a good outcome because it says it's by the end of the unit. And what you're trying to hopefully cultivate is an awareness about the importance of caring for others, right? And why that's important to Christian living and just being a human being, basically. All right. So good. Anyone on the cognitive one? What do we think about that?
The only thing I can think about that one would be maybe I think cognitive outcomes are usually more like concrete, like things that are happening. So maybe the word begin to interpret, like maybe do a more succinct definition.
You're bang on, right? Be more succinct. That to begin, no. Be maybe, interpret and analyze. That's heavy duty, right? So they're doing quite a bit. Exploring, that's a word also to avoid because exploring, we're not really sure what that is. All right. So you need to be more succinct with that. Yeah. Demonstrating how scripture was used to bring greater insight into religious knowledge and ways of knowing God. It's a little wordy, but if they're able to demonstrate, would they do a skit that Victoria was talking about earlier? Or was that Sarah? I forget now, but so just trying, that might be able to be refined a little bit, but demonstrating how scripture presents different ways of knowing God. All right. And that's important. People need to realize there's not just one way of meeting God. Okay. So we're up against the clock. So I have to stop there. I had 2 more pages worth, but we just don't have time to get to them. I hope that was helpful to go over that. When you're working on your outcomes for your lesson plan, make sure sometimes the textbook, the teacher program has a good one to use, so go with that. Otherwise, you'll want to tweak it and work it. And you might even want to tweak it compared with what's written down. Just because it's in a book doesn't mean it's any good. All right. So that's that. One thing I want to highlight again is that if you choose to teach out of a program, I've got copies of the programs that I've taken out of the college library. So if you know your topic you're doing out of the World Religions program, I can scan or I can take some pictures and send them to you. Okay. The other thing is the Coutts Library, the Education Library has copies of many of these programs. So you could look at that. And of course, the grade 7 one is online. All right. I just want to touch on here what we're doing for next week. A few things is one, the mini project, we're building off of this idea of outcomes. Now we're going to do assessment. How do we assess an RE? What do we assess? I know we talked about this a bit last week out of that program, but it's good to fine tune it and think about it. Because if we don't know what the end goal of religious education is, what we're going to assess, then we don't know what we're doing. Faith permeation, I've made a short lecture about that, about how we incorporate faith into other areas of the curriculum. And then finally, adolescent development, there's an article on that, thinking about how we handle faith in light of the adolescent person. One of the things that they'll talk about is this idea of faith development, and it's these 6 stages. We'll speak about it more next week, but I just thought I'd give you a heads up that there is work in this area. Good. That was a lot to jump through and to meet and work on. Were there any final questions? No? Okay, before we go, we'll just do something to learn about. I need to hear 3 people's favorite desserts. What is your favorite dessert? I need to hear it from 3 people.
Okay, it's Pie Day this weekend, so everyone make sure you have pie. Just putting that out there.
Excellent. What, right, is that on, that's Sunday then, eh? Yep. Thank you, Allie. Good idea. Okay, pie is always good. I like a good apple pie. I like any pie, really. Okay, that's one. Anyone else? Favorite dessert?
Red bean dessert. So it's like a pudding and it's warm. And there's like red beans in it. It's an Asian dessert.
Oh, nice. Do you have it often?
I usually get it at restaurants, like after dim sum, they'll serve it to you after.
I've never had it. I guess I gotta try that. Red bean. Red bean. I gotta do that. Okay, great. Sounds tasty and warm. And last one.
I think Jason had something interesting he texted me. He should tell it.
All right, you're in trouble, Jason. You put him on the hook. Let's hear yours.
Well, what I said is beer is a good dessert, but I know that's not. But I'll go ice cream cake. I like ice cream cake.
Oh, you can't go wrong with ice cream. Very good. Very good. Okay. I say it because we got to remember to celebrate life too, right? We can't just be sticks in the mud. All right. I'm going to be hanging around here. If you have any questions, if you have questions about the lesson plan assignment, send me something. You can even ask now or next week. All right. Good. All right. Unmute and let's say goodbye to everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. There we go. We're good.